Hello everyone and welcome back. Today we are going to be talking about how to improve upon our animation toolset by moving beyond just the simple rotation, location, and scale animations that we've done before. So before we've talked about how the basic things that we can keyframe, for example on this plane that I've created, the basic things that we can keyframe are location, rotation, and scale. And the problem with this is it means that my plane is never really changing. I can animate my plane in all sorts of different orientations, but I can't animate the shape of my plane becoming different. Now, we've seen how we can get some shapes to change by using armatures, but what I'm talking about today is being able to animate a specific type of extrusion or something like that. Any deforming of our shape we want to be able to animate. So let's see, do I have a good place to put this? Not really. Let's make a new one. So today we're going to learn about something called shape keys. Shape keys allow us to animate changes in shape. And shape keys are going to be kind of like keyframes, except we don't add keyframes. We don't add shape keys with I. We don't have to pick a certain type of rotation, location, or scale. We create the shape keys, and then we control how much we want the shape to change. So to set shape keys, I want to go to my upside down triangle, which is the object data panel, and I have a little section here called shape keys. Now I want to show you guys what I want to do. I want to animate. I'm going to take this plane and I'm going to subdivide it a couple of times. That looks like enough times. I'm going to subdivide my plane, and what I would like to do is to animate these pieces right here getting extruded out like this. So I want the animation to go like that. Right now we have no way of doing this because our location and rotation and scale keyframes don't provide for this kind of movement. So let's use a shape key to get this to do what we want it to do. Now, shape keys aren't just a matter of keyframing it in the starting position and keyframing it in the ending position. A shape key works so that you can have it in any in-between stage as well, and I'm going to show you what I mean. So whenever we create a shape key, the first thing we have to do is add the basis shape key. The basis shape key is always the first key, and it represents the shape in its default state. So in this case, just a flat, regular plane would be my basis, and then all of my deformations are going to come after my basis. So to add a basis, I'm going to go down here and hit plus, and you can see that it's added a shape key called basis. Now that's great, but I can't actually animate the basis shape key. So I need to add a second shape key that's going to actually deform my shape. So add another shape key that will change the shape. Now notice that this shape key is called key 1. I don't really like that. The names are always bad. So step 3 should always be rename your shape key to something that makes sense. And that's really important. It may not seem like it now, but we might have a shape that has dozens and dozens of shape keys on it, and it doesn't do us any good to have keys 1 through 12 if we don't know what they do. So I'm going to change this to column, because I'm going to have a column come out of the plane. So that's what I'm going to call my shape key. Now comes the part where we actually do the deformation. So now, with the key highlighted, enter edit mode and make changes. So with my column key highlighted, you can see that it's kind of blue here. I'm going to go into edit mode. I am going to press E to extrude, and I'm going to extrude my column however high I want it. Now, any deformations or changes that I make right now are going to get associated to this shape key. So column, if I also made a second building over here, it would also be attached to the column shape key. Usually, you want to make it so you have one shape key per change. So if we wanted 3 or 4 buildings, we might have 3 or 4 shape keys. We don't want to do them all at once, and I'll show you why here in a bit. Okay, so that looks good to me. I'm going to press Tab to get out of edit mode, and look what happens. My column disappears. But notice over here next to column, it has a value of 0. The way that shape keys work is that they go from 0 to 1, and that controls how much or how far along in the deformation we are. So if I grab this and slide it, you can see the numbers start to go up, and notice the value down below. That's going to take me all the way to the ending position of my column. So 1 means a full deformation, 0 means no deformation. So 5, change the shape key value to see the edit. 1.0 is finished, 0.0 is no change. So now we've got a property on which we can keyframe. Now I want to show you before we move on to actually animating this, because right now we're showing the changes, but we're not actually doing any animations. So I'm going to put this back to 0, and I'm going to go back into edit mode, but instead of creating, changing this column, I'm going to create another shape key and call it skyscraper. And I'm going to make another change here. So notice now that I have skyscraper highlighted and not column. I'm going to go in here. I'm going to select, let's see. Well, first of all, I want to deselect that. I'm going to select these 4, and I'm going to make a quick little skyscraper here. It's not going to be the best, but it'll get the job done. All right, here we go. That's looking pretty good. There. We'll call that our building. That's our skyscraper. So notice that that's attached to skyscraper. Now the reason I want to do these as separate shape keys is because I may want the changes in my building, or my skyscraper and my column to happen at different times. If they're both connected to the same shape key, then if I moved this column slider, it would move both of these, and I want to be able to move them separately. So I've created 2 separate shape keys for each of my objects, and notice that I can switch between them and make changes. And then when I click on column, the skyscraper has disappeared because it's not part of this shape key. Okay, so I'm going to go back out of edit mode, and I'm going to bring up, just so you guys can see the difference, I'm going to bring up column partway, about halfway, and then I'm going to bring up my skyscraper. And notice that my skyscraper starts to take shape as I make it closer to 1. So at about half, it hasn't really taken its full form yet, right? It's kind of being molded out of my plane. This is a way for us to show maybe a time lapse of a city rising out of the ground. We could also, a lot of times shape keys are used for expressions. So what you guys are going to do in class is take Suzanne's face and make a set of expressions with Suzanne's face. Okay, so let's take a look now at how we can animate shape keys. So I'm going to make another little set of notes here, animating shape keys. And shape keys are located on the dope sheet, so check the dope sheet. Let's move over to our animation view. Here's our dope sheet, but notice that right now, nothing is showing up on our dope sheet. So, we need to be able to actually find our shape keys. And to do that, we're going to go down here to where it says dope sheet, and we're going to change dope sheet to shape key editor. So this is a separate view from our dope sheet. So check the dope sheet and change it to shape key editor. Now, all we have to do is move sliders to create keyframes. So let's say at the beginning of this, I want my column and my skyscraper to start at 0. Watch what happens in my dope sheet. As I bring this guy back to 0, it turns yellow, and a diamond shows up in my dope sheet, just like when I create keyframes the old-fashioned way. So I have now added a keyframe of 0 at the first frame in my animation. I'm going to do the same thing to my skyscraper. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to have my column grow slower than my skyscraper. So I'm going to move up to 60 frames. I'm going to have my column come up to about halfway. We want 0.5. There we go. And then I'm going to move to 120 frames. And I'm going to have my skyscraper come up the full way, like that. And then I'm going to move to, let's see, 190 frames. And I'm going to finish off my column. So now I've got 3 keyframes for my column and 2 keyframes for my skyscraper. And because my column rises last, we should see that happen slower than my building. Let's check it out. So we can see there that my column slows way down, and it keeps going after my skyscraper is stopped. Now, what if I want the column to pause once it reaches 0.5? I don't want it to start again until after the skyscraper's done. I'm going to go back to 120, and I'm going to move. You can see here that right now my column grows from 0.5 to 0.845. I'm going to bring this back down to 0.5 so that no change happens between... Oh, I might have to do this manually. No change happens between keyframe 60 and keyframe 120. So we shouldn't see any change in the column. Let's see what happens. Should just stop. So it stops right there. My skyscraper finishes, and then my column finishes. So there's any amount of things that can happen with shape keys, and you can add different shapes to the scene as well. The one thing you want to be very careful of, I'm going to add a little note in here. Always reset to basis before adding new shapes. So if I now want to add another shape into this scene, I want to make sure that under my object data, I go back to basis. Oh, sorry, not just that. Go back to basis. Always reset to basis. One more little step. Always reset to basis and return shape keys to 0 before adding new shapes. Usually what that means is that I want to not do my animations until I am done putting all the shapes into the scene. Or it may mean that I just go back to frame 1, which is a point where my stuff is at 0, and then I start adding shapes then. It's not a huge deal. You probably won't break anything if you have to add something later, but it's always a good idea when we're adding shapes and changing shapes, it's always a good idea to switch back to basis and return to 0, 0 on our other shape keys that we've created. But now we could feel free to add Suzanne's face and use shape keys to give her expressions, or maybe start with a sphere and add a shape key to show it getting crumpled using proportional editing. But there's any number of ways that we can change a shape to make the shape keys work. And I hope that you guys take the opportunity to play around with these animations and get creative with some of your changes to shapes, because as long as we can do it in edit mode, we can animate it with shape keys. Thanks for watching.